A cold winter snowstorm covered Washington, D.C. on the evening of February 24, 2026. Inside the Capitol building, a big event was unfolding. President Donald Trump walked into the room where the country's lawmakers were gathered. He was there to deliver his yearly speech, the State of the Union Address. This speech was record-breaking for its length. It lasted almost 2 hours, specifically 108 minutes, making it the longest such address in American history. While some inside the chamber felt a celebratory mood, the political reality for President Trump was serious. His approval ratings had gone down, and many Americans did not trust his handling of the economy. This created big problems for his political party before the important midterm elections in November, where control of Congress was at stake. This very long speech was more than a formal event. It was a desperate attempt by President Trump to change how people saw things. He wanted to tell his story and win back the confidence of Americans. He spoke about many important topics, from money and jobs to problems with other nations. A key part of President Trump's speech involved his plans for the economy, especially special taxes called tariffs on imported goods. This policy, however, had caused a major conflict with the Supreme Court. Just days before the speech, the highest court in the land had ruled against some of the president's tariff actions.
This created a constitutional collision, a serious disagreement about the president's powers and the law. We will explore this important showdown between the White House and the Supreme Court in more detail later in our story. 2. Money and prices. President Trump began his speech by talking about the economy. He told the country that the golden age of America was here. He said that more Americans had jobs than ever before. This sounded very good and hopeful. However, the real economic picture was not so clear. While many people were working, the number of new jobs was growing much slower. The year 2025 was the worst for creating new jobs since 2003, if you do not count times of big economic problems. In 2025, about 584,000 jobs were made. This was much less than the 2 million new jobs in 2024 and 2023. Prices for everyday things also showed a mixed story. The cost of eggs went down a lot. From January 2025 to January 2026, egg prices dropped by almost half. They were much cheaper than their highest price in March 2025. But at the same time, other important things became more expensive. Beef prices, for example, reached new record highs. A pound of ground beef cost $6.75 last month. This made it harder for families to buy food.
The president's plan to help the economy often included using tariffs. Tariffs are special taxes on goods from other countries. But just 4 days before his speech, something big happened. The Supreme Court made a ruling in a case called Learning Resources, Inc. versus Trump. The court said that President Trump used too much power when he put tariffs on many products. This ruling meant that many of his tariffs were now illegal. This decision from the highest court was a big problem for President Trump's economic plans. His main tool for fixing economic issues had been stopped. The Supreme Court justices were even sitting in the room when he gave his speech. Now, with many tariffs removed, people wondered what President Trump would do next to fight for his economic vision. 3. The big fight on taxes. The president's speech happened just after a big fight about money and taxes. 4 days before the speech, on February 20th, the Supreme Court made a very important decision. This high court looked at President Donald Trump's use of tariffs. Tariffs are like special taxes that countries put on goods coming in from other countries. The Supreme Court said that President Trump had used too much power. He had used an old law from 1977 to put taxes on many products. But the court decided that he went beyond his legal rights. This ruling meant that many of the tariffs he had already put in place were now not legal.
This was a direct challenge to his economic plans. But President Trump did not stop. The day after the court's decision, he made a new announcement. He said he would increase global tariffs to 15%. He announced this on his social media platform. In the room where he gave his speech, Supreme Court justices were present. President Trump criticized their ruling, calling it unfortunate. He said he had found alternative legal ways to keep these tariffs going. He made it clear that congressional action will not be necessary for his new plan. This made many people wonder if his new method was truly legal, since experts said such wide tariffs usually need Congress's approval. Democrats in Congress quickly spoke against this. A large group of Democrats, called the New Democrat Coalition, sent a letter to President Trump. They asked him to pay back billions of dollars from the tariffs that the Supreme Court had stopped. They said these taxes had already hurt American businesses and families. Governor Abigail Spanberger, a Democrat from Virginia, also spoke. She said the president's trade policies had forced American families to pay more than $1,700 each in extra costs. This big fight over taxes showed a clear disagreement between the president and the courts, and also with many lawmakers. He faced strong opposition at home for his economic ideas.
While this important economic battle was happening, a much more serious problem was growing overseas. Far away, there was talk of dangerous nuclear threats. American warships were moving, ready for action. A new, very risky conflict was about to begin, making people around the world worried. 4. The Border and the Law. Chapter 4 focused on immigration, a key topic for the administration. President Donald Trump spoke about his plans to control the nation's borders. There was a big drop in people crossing the southern border. In January 2026, border officials met about 10,000 people. This was much less than the 61,000 people they met in January 2025. The Department of Homeland Security had not let any immigrants into the U.S. for 8 months while they waited for court. President Trump said these numbers showed the border was now safe. However, many people had worries about the mass deportation campaign. Some concerns included agents entering homes without court papers and arresting immigrants with no criminal pasts. There were also worries about many people being held in detention centers and deportations without fair legal processes. Inside the room, there was strong disagreement. When President Trump talked about immigration, some Democrats reacted loudly. Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib shouted at him. Their anger was partly because of 2 American citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, who died in January in Minneapolis. Immigration agents killed them. President Trump did not speak about their deaths in his speech. Representative Norma Torres held up pictures of Renee Good and Alex Preddy during the speech to show this. President Trump also asked Congress to pass a new rule, called the Delilah Law. This law would stop immigrants without legal status from getting commercial work licenses. Funding for the Department of Homeland Security was also a big problem. There was a partial government shutdown. Democrats would not approve new money after the Minneapolis killings. President Trump demanded that all money for border security and the Department of Homeland Security be given back right away. While the nation worked to make its own borders stronger, a new danger was growing far away. The United States had given a terrifying ultimatum to a foreign adversary, Iran. This serious message, a final warning, set the stage for a possible war involving nuclear threats and American warships. 5. Warships and worries. The president's speech then moved to a very serious issue, the situation with Iran. This part of the speech worried many people, as it talked about possible war. Earlier, in 2025, the United States had attacked nuclear places in Iran. This mission was called Operation Midnight Hammer.
President Trump said that U.S. forces had destroyed Iran's nuclear weapons program. But Iran said this was not true. They said they were not trying to build nuclear weapons. Now the U.S. and Iran were in a difficult talk. It was a fragile situation. After the strikes, President Trump set a deadline for Iran. He said they had 10 to 15 days to make a deal. If they did not, military action could happen. Talks were planned in Geneva, a city known for important meetings. To show strength, the U.S. had sent many warships to the Middle East. There were 2 aircraft carriers, many other warships, and hundreds of warplanes near Iran. This was the biggest military buildup in the area since the war in Iraq. President Trump said he wanted peace, but he would not let Iran have nuclear weapons. He warned of a maximalist military strike if the talks failed. This meant a very big attack could happen. People around the world watched closely. The possibility of war made everyone anxious. Oil prices went up. Brent crude oil, an important oil, rose to over $71 a barrel. Iran produces a lot of oil, and any fighting there could cause prices to go even higher. President Trump also asked for a very large defense budget, $1 trillion, to make the U.S. military stronger. President Trump also said that he could force Iran to make a deal. He claimed this was because of a successful secret mission that happened last month.
He said this mission showed America's power to the world. 6. A secret mission. The president's speech included a surprising story, one few people knew about. He honored Chief Warrant Officer Eric Slover, a very brave pilot. Slover was a key part of a secret mission last month. This mission was to capture Nicolas Maduro, the leader of Venezuela. It happened late at night. Slover piloted the first Chinook helicopter, landing it at Maduro's military compound. As the helicopter prepared to land, Slover was badly hurt in his leg and hip, but he did not stop. He continued flying, ensuring the special commandos could get out safely. They successfully captured Maduro. Retired General David Petraeus noted how risky this operation was, but no American lives were lost. This was a clear victory for the administration and showed its firm resolve. This successful mission highlighted America's power. It sent a strong message to countries like Iran. It showed the United States is ready to take decisive action. If America could carry out such a difficult mission in South America, it meant the country had the power and will to do similar things in the Middle East. The speech also featured many special guests and ceremonial moments, adding to the big public show. Members of the U.S. men's Olympic hockey team were there, receiving a standing ovation. President Donald Trump announced he would give the Presidential Medal of Freedom to their goalie.
Other guests included Erica Kirk, whose husband was killed, and Claire Lai, whose father was jailed.
President Trump also reunited a man freed from a Venezuelan prison with his niece. These public moments were part of a plan to highlight specific messages. Even with these overseas victories and public displays, President Donald Trump's most urgent priority was closer to home. It was not about foreign countries or military actions. Instead, his main focus was a new law about voting. This important legislation could change how all Americans vote forever. 7. Voting and the future. President Donald Trump spoke about many topics, but one law was most important to him. He said the Save America Act must pass before anything else. This showed that changing voting rules was his highest priority, even more important than the economy. The Save America Act wants new rules for voting. First, all people who vote must show a photo ID. Second, they must show proof they are a U.S. citizen. This could be a birth certificate or a passport. Also, the law would limit mail-in ballots. People could only use them if they were sick, disabled, in the military, or traveling. States would also need to check voter lists with a government database to find non-citizens. President Trump and his supporters believe this law will make elections safer and stop cheating, but many others do not agree.
Democrats and groups working for voting rights say this law would make it much harder for millions of Americans to vote. For example, about half of all Americans do not have a passport. They say this change would happen very fast, just before the midterm elections, without giving states extra money to help. Governor Spanberger, a Democrat, has spoken against this bill. She says there is little proof of widespread fraud by non-citizens, and such claims have been questioned by experts and election officials. It is already illegal for non-U.S. citizens to vote in federal elections. The law passed in the House of Representatives, but it is difficult for it to pass in the Senate because of a rule called the filibuster. This rule means a bill often needs more than a simple majority of votes to pass. If the Senate does not vote for the bill, President Trump has said he will try to use an executive order. This means he would try to put many of the voting restrictions in place himself without Congress. But courts have stopped similar orders before, so this plan would likely face immediate legal challenges. The president's long speech also had some quiet parts. He did not talk about the 4-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine. He also did not mention the national debt, which is how much money the country owes. And he did not speak about the release of government documents about Jeffrey Epstein, even though some victims were in the room.
The midterm elections are coming in less than 9 months. The path forward for the country is set, but it is filled with legal and military challenges. 8. What will happen now? The months after the State of the Union address hold many important actions and challenges. There are 6 main areas to watch closely. This time will show the direction of the country. First, the situation with Iran is critical. Diplomatic talks are set for Geneva. President Donald Trump has given a deadline of 10 to 15 days, ending in early March, for Iran to agree to a deal. If diplomacy fails, military action remains possible. Both paths, talking and military readiness, are being followed at the same time, creating high global anxiety. Second, the government plans to keep its tariffs, even after a Supreme Court ruling. It will use new legal ways to do this. There will be arguments in Congress about returning money from tariffs collected before the ruling. More court cases are expected as the government tries to justify its new trade policies, which could lead to a constitutional collision. Third, the Save America Act about voting rules will likely not pass the Senate. This is due to a filibuster. However, President Donald Trump has stated he will use executive orders to put in place voting restrictions.
It is almost certain that these executive orders will face immediate legal challenges in courts. Fourth, immigration enforcement will continue.
This will happen once the Department of Homeland Security receives its full funding again. The Delilah Law is a new proposed law to further limit immigration by banning commercial licenses for non-legal residents. The government will also keep pressure on cities and states that offer protection to immigrants without legal status. Fifth, on the economy. The administration wants to present money from tariffs as a future way to replace income taxes. It is not clear if this is a serious policy idea or just a statement, leading to an economic experiment for the nation. Sixth, President Donald Trump wants a $1 trillion defense budget. This will lead to major discussions and debates in Congress over spending plans, marking the largest defense funding request in U.S. history. Experts are watching these developments carefully. The Brookings Institution, a research group, said that President Donald Trump is focusing on parts of his plan that many Americans do not support, like tariffs and strict immigration rules. They said his speech aimed to please his supporters, not to win over other voters. Congressman Jim Himes from the House Intelligence Committee is worried about a possible war with Iran. He sees no good reason for another conflict in the Middle East. Scholars like Hassan Menemne believe Trump's words about Iran's missiles are meant to make Americans support a war by making them think the U.S. is directly threatened. The next months will be full of high tensions and unclear outcomes. The future of the country and its place in the world hangs in the balance. The State of the Union speech showed a moment of undecided history, full of contradictions and competing ideas for America's path forward.
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.